What is going on, Guardians? My name is Bosox and welcome back to another video. Last week I ended up beating the raid for the first time a couple days after it released, and I wanted to go over kind of a basic build because I think that this raid is great if you are just getting into raiding. Of the three raids, I definitely think the newest one is by far the simplest in terms of like mechanics and things like that, and it's all about being comfortable and staying alive in order to complete the raid. And if you're new to Destiny 2 or you are just thinking about getting into raiding, I wanted to get you off on the right step so that when you get into the raid, you're much more comfortable and prepared. I do want to stress that you don't have to bring any of this in to complete this raid. I think this raid is extremely simple, and overall, it's a lot of fun and rewards some pretty cool stuff. So let's get right into it. Because of the expanded loot pool that Bungie just fixed for reset like yesterday, there's a ton of new guns that could be really useful in the raid that you should definitely get your hands on. And I think for the first step, the number one overall step that you should definitely do to be most comfortable in this raid is do the Lament quest. You can pick it up from Banshee. You can do it in like an hour or two, probably like 2 hours. And overall, the Lament is just a crazy good sword and overall very good DPS for one of the harder encounters in the raid. And so I would recommend, definitely, if you want to make your life simple, bring the Lament, because it's a really good gun, a really good sword, and if you are planning on raiding, you can already have access to this sword and definitely have it before you go in. The next thing I would recommend getting is just a Falling Guillotine, because swords are really effective in the new raid, along with there are Void Shield Captains and stuff, and now you can get these from just random drops from Banshee. So if you're just turning in gunsmith materials and one of these pops up, you're good. For the rest of your loadout, you can kind of use anything, but I'm just going to show you what I did encounter to encounter. So in the first encounter, it's mostly just about clearing ads and doing a little bit of damage to these like cylinder things that are pretty easy to damage. And for that room, I would recommend using something. I just used the Chattering Bone. If you obviously haven't raided, because this guide is for people who probably haven't raided at all and are looking to get into it, you can just use something like a Cold Denial or other kinetic pulse rifle that you have. Anything will do in this area. Even a Steel Feather repeater like an auto rifle. They're all really good options. And then I used or you could even use an SMG and a shotgun in this category, but I basically used a combination of a weapon and a shotgun to deal my damage to the cylinder things. Other than that, just use the character you feel most comfortable on. We're on my Warlock, and the subclass I'm definitely most comfortable on when I'm raiding is Well of Radiance. So that's what I was using. If you're a hunter, if you feel comfortable on the tether because you can go invis, that's cool. You can definitely use that. Basically I think you can use that the entire raid if you wanted to. If you're a Titan and you think Bubble is is your best subclass, then definitely go with that. Although you could use aggressive classes if you also feel comfortable using those. I just want to say that this raid is really easy and it's all about feeling comfortable. And we're just going to keep harping on that point. So yeah, that's what I used for the first encounter, basically a sword. You could even use Falling Guillotine in this spot. I think I actually used First In, Last Out, Falling Guillotine, and Huckleberry, which isn't on here, but I can go over and grab it really fast, just because Huckleberry with the Catalyst, you never have to reload it, so overall it's really good. This has Vorpal weapon on it, so it's also very good. But you don't have to get that specific with anything. You could run something as simple as an SMG and a shotgun. Like, that's it. You don't have to do that. If you don't have Perfect Paradox, I don't know if it's in the loot pool that they updated, but you can always get a Hawthorne's field shotgun thing instead. And yeah, that's it for the first encounter. And it's very much not very difficult encounter. Depending on if you're doing it with new people, all new team, then it's going to probably be a little bit harder. And if you're doing it with a group of more experienced people, then it's going to be definitely pretty easy. Now we go to the second encounter, which is probably the toughest encounter in the raid. I know that a lot of people were definitely struggling with it day one. I don't know if it's still a struggle, but because of with the second encounter, something like a pulse rifle and the lament, and you're going to be golden. Lament's really good because it's the best boss damage sword for the second encounter by far. If you don't have a lament, I would recommend getting the lament before going into the raid, but you can always rock Falling Guillotine. That's it for the loadout for the first two encounters. I would if you wanted to go more in depth with your loadout, you could run something like Lucent Blade, Protective Light, and Taking Charge, but those definitely aren't necessary. They're just overall really good mods to have for the raid. But if you don't have them, don't stress about it. Again, this raid seems like the easiest of the three raids, and I think Bungie wants a lot of people playing it. And the mechanics of the raid aren't very challenging at all. For the third encounter, whether or not you have a role, the third encounter is mostly about ad clearing and being an effective player when it comes to ad clearing. And for something like that, you can rock the Ikelos SMG, you could rock the 7th Seraph SMG, you can use literally any of those SMGs I would recommend. Again, I would recommend a shotgun and a sword. You could run Lament here, definitely. I think that's a really good option. And yeah, I think that this loadout for weapons is fine. And hopefully you have one Warmind Cell mod so that you can proc your Ikelos SMG or your 7th Seraph SMG and make Warmind Cells, because Warmind Cells make that encounter a lot easier because you're able to just blow up ads at an incredible rate. And that encounter is primarily about being able to stay alive while ad clearing and doing a couple of other things like moving the nuclear cells around. Finally, you'll end up at the boss encounter that easily, I know. The way that I'll show you the way I set up for it, I just used Chattering Bone and then I used Anarchy. So I used these three. Obviously, First In Last Out came in a last season, and you kind of had to farm it because you kind of had to know that it was really good for DPS and you had to farm it. So maybe a ton of you don't have that, as well as obviously Anarchy is a raid exotic, and there's definitely people who don't have this raid exotic yet. And so in that case, I have a pretty easy solution. I would definitely go with Gnawing Hunger. I would swap probably, if you had Xenophage, Xenophage is really good damage for the boss. And then I would use, I would just use Xenophage for your boss damage, and then use whatever you feel comfortable with. If you have a Slug Shoddy that's not an exotic, you could fill it in here. You could use Gnawing Hunger here. And yeah, basically that's what I would recommend. If you don't have a Xenophage, then a machine gun to kill ads with, and then Chaperone and a Gnawing Hunger so you can do boss DPS. The shotguns are specific for Divinity if you have a Divinity in your group. Obviously another raid exotic. If you're raiding with more experienced people because you went on LFG, then you're going to end up in a situation where someone probably has Divinity. And then if no one on your team has Divinity because you're all very new to raiding, then I would just recommend, I would recommend Xenophage, because Xenophage, you don't have to crit the boss, and I think that's really important because the crit spot on the boss is actually very difficult to hit. And, yeah, in the final room, basically just rock your Protective Light mod, if you have it, just so you can stay alive a little bit better. And yeah, that's it. I think that of the three, Garden and Last Wish and this is by far the easiest. Garden has a lot going on at once, and Last Wish is extremely long, so if you don't have enough time, then that raid's a little bit more difficult, but this raid is short, It's pretty simple and overall a lot of fun. So I would highly recommend getting into it, and you can get some pretty cool stuff like these helmets or the new hand cannon as well as the new sniper rifle. Some pretty cool loot there for you guys to farm. And yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hopefully these loadouts will help some of you beat the raid, and I'll see you in another one. Goodbye.